Throughout history, humans have shown terrifying creativity when it comes to killing. But not all death came from swords or fire. Some came from traps. Brutal, silent, and unforgettable traps. These weren't just weapons, they were psychological tools, built to strike fear before a single drop of blood was spilled. Today, we uncover the most real and brutal traps in human history. All of them were actually used, and every one tells a horrifying story. 1. Man traps, 18th to 19th century Europe, used by landowners to catch poachers. During the 1700s and 1800s, poaching was a serious crime in Britain. Nobles protected their lands with more than fences. They used man traps. These mechanical devices resembled oversized bear traps with heavy, toothed jaws. Hidden among leaves or grass, they waited patiently for a trespasser. Step in the wrong place, snap. Steel jaws clamp shut with enough force to shatter bone or sever a foot. Originally used to kill, they were later regulated to only injure after British law changed. But the horror remained. Many traps were left unmarked, and more than one unlucky soul lost a leg in the name of property rights. 2. The bamboo trap, Southeast Asia, used in tribal warfare and later guerrilla tactics. Another deadly invention from Asia was the bamboo whip trap. A flexible sapling was bent and tied down, its tip armed with a razor-sharp bamboo spear. The trigger, a nearly invisible tripwire. When a soldier brushed the wire, the bent bamboo snapped up at lightning speed, impaling the victim's torso, throat, or face with terrifying force. In some variations, multiple spears were attached, striking from different directions. It was fast, silent, and nearly impossible to dodge. 3. The booby-trapped helmet, World War II. Used by both Axis and Allied forces. War isn't just fought with bullets. In World War II, soldiers learned to fear even the dead. Retreating forces would sometimes leave behind gear, helmets, food, or weapons as bait. Inside these, they planted explosives wired to detonate on movement. Imagine a soldier, desperate for supplies, picking up an enemy helmet, only for it to explode in his face. This type of trap was especially cruel. It turned basic survival into a deadly gamble. Even after the guns stopped firing, the battlefield remained alive with death waiting under every stone. 4. The swinging log trap, medieval Europe and Asia, used in forest ambushes and castle defense. Popularized in fiction, but real in function, the swinging log trap was used in narrow paths, corridors, or castle entryways. A massive log, sometimes studded with spikes or nails, was suspended high, tied back with ropes. When triggered, it would swing down like a pendulum. The momentum could crush a man instantly or send him tumbling down a cliff. It was favored in dense forests, where invaders had limited mobility. And while primitive, the sheer force made it lethal, especially when timed just right. 5. Greek fire traps, Byzantine Empire, used in naval defense and sieges. Greek fire was the medieval napalm of the Byzantine Empire. Highly flammable, it burned even on water. But some Byzantine engineers went further. They booby-trapped doors, tunnels, and siege entry points with clay pots of Greek fire. Triggered by pressure or flame, these pots exploded into searing flames, setting men alight and trapping others in burning corridors. It wasn't just destruction, it was psychological warfare. Many invaders feared Greek fire more than arrows. 6. Tiger traps, used in India and Africa. Originally for hunting, later used in warfare. These were massive pits dug in hunting regions to trap large predators, tigers, lions, or elephants. But during colonial uprisings and tribal warfare, they became deadly anti-human traps. At the bottom, rows of sharpened stakes, sometimes poisoned, covered with palm leaves, branches, or dirt, nearly impossible to see. Soldiers on patrol would suddenly fall 10 feet deep, landing in a deadly bouquet of spikes. Those who survived the fall were often left to bleed out, their screams echoing for hours. 7. Flaming tar trap. Mongol invasions. Used during sieges and urban defense. When cities faced the unstoppable Mongol army, they got creative. In some cases, defenders set up traps using boiling tar or pitch, placed above gates in narrow corridors. When enemies stormed through, defenders poured the burning substance down from holes or cauldrons above. It would stick to skin, armor, and cloth, melting flesh while igniting anything it touched. Screams from burning men would often terrify the next wave of attackers, buying the defenders precious time. 8. Rolling boulder trap. Ancient South America. Used by Incan and pre-Incan civilizations. In the Andes, narrow mountain passes and temple corridors created perfect spots for deadly ambushes. Some civilizations rigged massive boulders to roll down slopes when a trip line or pressure trigger was activated. The weight alone could crush dozens of men at once, and in tight stone pass, there was nowhere to run. Spanish conquistadors recorded stories of sudden rock falls that wiped out entire patrols. Not natural disasters, but deliberate traps set by defenders. 9. Deadfall spike trap. Native American warfare, used in territorial conflicts and skirmishes. Some Native American tribes, during intertribal wars or resistance against settlers, built deadfall traps, logs or stones rigged with spike-covered bottoms. Balanced high above, these weights would fall when a pressure plate or tripwire was activated. If a group passed through, the trap could drop and instantly crush skulls or rib cages. Often placed in forest choke points or narrow paths, they were perfectly camouflaged, blending into the environment. It was nature turned against man, and it worked. 10. The caltrop. Ancient Rome to World War II. Used to disable cavalry and foot soldiers. At first glance, caltrops seem small, just metal spikes arranged so one spike always points up, but their simplicity made them terrifying. Scattered across roads, paths, and battlefields, they pierced feet, hooves, or tires. In Roman times, they disabled charging horses. In World War II, they were used to stop enemy vehicles or paratroopers. And in guerrilla warfare, caltrops dipped in poison or feces turned a small wound into a death sentence. They weren't flashy, but they were efficient killers. 11. The pit trap. With swinging blades. Medieval defense used in castle dungeons and defense tunnels. In some castles, passageways were rigged with trapdoors that gave way, dropping intruders into blade-lined pits. Sometimes, the walls had swinging or rotating scythe-like blades, powered by gears or counterweights. Anyone who fell was sliced, either as they dropped or as they tried to climb out. Some historical blueprints even describe mechanisms where spikes would emerge after the fall, impaling anyone who landed safely. It was overkill, and that's exactly the point. These weren't just tools of war. They were symbols, messages, carved into the earth and wood. You are not welcome here. You will die if you continue. Brutal traps throughout history weren't just about killing. They were about fear. Fear that made men hesitate, that turned every step into a question. Would you have survived? Or would your story have ended in a hole beneath the leaves? or under a falling sky? Let us know in the comments, which of these traps terrified you the most? And what kind of brutal or historical video do you want to see next? Your feedback helps us shape the next dark chapter in history. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon